I was in court when the judge gave my dad 5 years for beating my stepdad to a pulp. That was the day I decided to stop telling the truth. My mom cried the whole drive home, while my stepdad stroked her face. "I'm going to stay with my friend Tilly for a few days," she said through tears. My stepdad smirked as I dug my nails into her arm. "Please don't leave me alone with him." Mom slapped me. "Your father filled your head with lies. Brandon's been nothing but good to us." Mom left an hour later with every suitcase we had in the house. Brandon stood by the front door and turned the deadbolt. Click. He put the key in his pocket and ran his beady eyes along my body. "Let's talk about what you told your father." I was halfway up the stairs when I felt his hand catch my ankle. I kicked backwards as hard as I could and slammed my bedroom door shut before wheeling my wardrobe in front of it. I tried to open the window and noticed there were screws drilled into the frame. He'd been planning this. I heard the power drill start up downstairs and my stomach dropped. He was coming up the stairs now. Suddenly, I heard the drill outside my door, while he installed something I couldn't see. After a few minutes, it stopped and his footsteps walked away down the hall. I pushed the dresser aside and tried the door, but it wouldn't move. He'd locked me in from the outside. "We have 3 days," his voice sang through the door. 3 days to teach you what happens to little girls who tell lies about their stepdaddies." I tore through my closet looking for anything useful and found my old Chromebook buried under some clothes. I instantly opened Discord and messaged my friend. "Brandon locked me in my room. He's going to hurt me." She responded immediately. "Is this about your dad? You promised you wouldn't tell." Before I could type anything back, the screen went black. He'd cut the power. I knew I didn't have long before he had his way with me. I instantly grabbed the lamp from my nightstand and swung it at the window as hard as I could. Crack! An alarm started screaming through the house. While I climbed out the broken window, I could hear him slamming his body against my doorframe. He was laughing, like this was all some game he'd been excited to play. The door crashed open, but I didn't look back. I shimmied sideways along the ledge, barely making my way towards the bathroom window. Before Brandon could figure out what was going on, I grabbed the frame and hit the tile floor hard. There was a small window above the toilet, and I locked the door, and just as Brandon made it the door. "I tried to be patient while your dad ruined everything," he screamed over and over. "But now he's gone." The bathroom door exploded inward and he grabbed my ankles, pulling me back. I screamed and clawed at the window frame until my fingernails bent backwards and broke. He was pulling so hard that he slipped, and suddenly I was sliding through, falling into the bushes below. I had so much adrenaline in my body that I didn't even care about the pain. I just forced myself up and started running toward our neighbor Miss Apple's house. I looked back once and saw Brandon walking out the front door, like he had all the time in the world because he knew I couldn't get far. His hand was in his jacket pocket, wrapped around something I couldn't see. Miss Apple's porch light turned on and the door opened. "Help!" I tried to scream, but it came out as barely a gasp. "Honey, come back inside." Brandon's voice was sickly sweet. Miss Apple stepped onto her porch looking worried. "Oh my goodness, what happened to you, dear?" I collapsed onto her lawn, unable to stand anymore. "He locked me in my room. He's going to hurt me. Please call 911. Brandon knelt down beside me with perfect concern arranged on his face. "Miss Apple, I'm so sorry about this. She's been having episodes since her father went to prison." He pulled out his phone and showed her dozens of fake text messages from my mom. Her mother warned me she might try something like this. She's been self-injuring, making up stories about people. We thought giving her some space would help. She's been hurting herself and blaming others, Brandon said with this sad, understanding voice. It's a cry for help. We've been trying to get her the support she needs. Miss Apple was already helping him lift me up off her lawn, and I tried to pull away, but she was holding my arm now, believing every word he said. "Sweetheart, you're bleeding all over the place. Let's get you inside and call your mother right away." "Thank you so much," Brandon said as he picked me up like I weighed nothing. "I'll take her home and get her cleaned up." Next thing I knew, we were back inside the house. Brandon set me down on the couch and got the first aid kit from under the sink, started cleaning the cuts on my hands with alcohol that burned like fire. "You're going to keep quiet from now on. No one's here to protect you." He reached under the couch and his hand came back up holding rope. 3 days is a long time to be locked in here with me. He grabbed both my wrists and started wrapping the rope around them, but I bit down on his hand as hard as I could, tasting copper and blood. His hand jerks back from my teeth and I taste his blood in my mouth as he stumbles backward, cursing. I scramble away from him on the couch, my heart hammering so hard I can barely breathe, and I see him looking at his bleeding hand with this expression that's half shock and half something darker. For a second, he just stares at the bite marks, at the blood running between his fingers, and I think maybe he didn't expect me to fight back at all. His face is red and twisted, and I'm waiting for him to grab me again, to hit me, to do something violent. But then something changes in his eyes and it scares me more than his anger did. Brandon's face shifts from rage to this cold calculation that makes my stomach drop, and he takes a slow breath like he's forcing himself to stay calm. He wraps his hand in his shirt and the white fabric turns red almost instantly, but he doesn't even wince. When he speaks, his voice is creepy soft, like he's talking to a small child who doesn't understand. He says we need to talk about boundaries and consequences, like I'm the one who did something wrong by biting him when he was trying to tie me up. The way he says it makes my skin crawl because it sounds so reasonable, so practiced, like he's been planning what to say in this exact situation. I force myself to nod, and my voice comes out small and shaky when I tell him I'll listen. I'll do whatever he wants. Just please don't hurt me. I'm watching his body language for any sign he's about to grab me again, studying the way his shoulders are tight and his jaw keeps clenching even though his voice stays soft. He seems to buy my fake compliance and sits down in the armchair across from me, still holding his bleeding hand wrapped in the shirt. I notice he keeps glancing at the rope on the floor, like he's deciding whether to use it right now or wait. My whole body is tense and ready to run even though I know there's nowhere to go, and I'm trying to figure out what he wants to hear. He starts talking about respect and trust in this rehearsed way that sounds totally fake, like he memorized a script about healthy family relationships. While he's going on about how much he's done for me and Mom, I hear him pick up his phone from the coffee table. He calls my mom on speaker and she answers right away, her voice already shaky like she's been crying this whole time. Brandon tells her I'm having another episode, that I attacked him and hurt myself trying to break windows, and I can hear her crying harder and saying she knew this would happen. His voice is so calm and sad as he describes my behavior, and I'm sitting there with my mouth open because every word is a lie. I try to yell that he's lying, that he locked me in and tried to tie me up, but he talks right over me in a louder voice. He tells Mom I'm hysterical and he thinks I need professional help, maybe inpatient treatment where I can be monitored. Mom's voice breaks as she says she'll stay with Tilly a few more days to give me space to calm down, and that's when I realize they planned this whole thing together before she even left. She knew he was going to do this and she left me here anyway. After he hangs up, I'm shaking so hard my teeth are chattering, but I force myself to think. I tell him my hand really hurts and I need to use the bathroom, making my voice small and defeated like I've given up completely. He studies me for a long moment and I can see him trying to decide if I'm faking, if this is some kind of trick. Finally, he nods, but he follows me to the bathroom and stands right outside the door, and I know he's not going to give me any real privacy. I close the door most of the way, but it doesn't latch and I can see his shadow in the crack. While I'm in the bathroom, I spot a tiny shard of glass on the floor near the shower, probably from when I broke the window earlier and climbed through. I palm it carefully, feeling the sharp edges cut into my skin a little, and I tuck it into my sock as quietly as possible. The glass presses against my ankle and it hurts, but it's the first thing that's felt like hope since he dragged me back inside. When I come out, Brandon is waiting in the hallway and he walks me toward my bedroom. He shows me the new lock he installed on my bedroom door from the outside, this heavy-duty deadbolt with a key he keeps in his pocket. He says very casually that I'll be staying in my room for the next 3 days until I learn my lesson about lying and causing trouble. The way he says 3 days makes my stomach drop because he's been planning this down to the exact timeline, thinking through every detail. He opens the door and gestures for me to go inside, and I have no choice but to walk into my own room like it's a prison cell. The second I'm through the doorway, I hear the deadbolt slide into place with this solid metal sound. I'm alone now, and I wait until I hear him go downstairs, his footsteps getting quieter. Then I pull out the glass shard from my sock and use it to scratch a message under my dresser, where it won't be seen unless someone moves the furniture. My hand is shaking so bad the letters come out messy, but I write the date, the time, and locked from outside by Brandon, in tiny letters. It feels like leaving a trail for whoever might find me later, like I'm creating proof that this really happened. Hours pass and I sit on my bed trying not to panic, trying to think of what to do next. Eventually, I hear the deadbolt slide open and Brandon brings me a sandwich and water, setting the tray down just inside the door while watching me carefully. He asks questions about my dad and what exactly I told him, and I mirror his calm tone and tell him what he wants to hear. I say I made it all up because I was angry about the divorce, that dad didn't do anything wrong and neither did Brandon. The lies taste bitter, but I force them out because I need him to think I'm broken, that his plan is working. He leaves me alone again, and I wait until his footsteps fade down the hallway before I dig through my desk drawer looking for anything useful. I find an old pen that still has some ink, and I press the tip against my palm, writing the words, "Help, locked," in shaky letters that barely stay straight. My hands won't stop shaking, and the letters come out messy, but they're readable enough that someone might see them if I get a chance to show anyone. Just having this tiny plan makes me feel slightly less trapped, like I'm doing something instead of just waiting for whatever Brandon has planned next. I hear his voice downstairs, and I press my ear against the heating vent in my floor, listening hard to make out what he's saying. He's on the phone with someone, and his tone is smooth and casual, completely different from how he sounds when he talks to me. I catch bits of the conversation and realize he's calling the alarm company, explaining that his stepdaughter accidentally set off the system and everything's fine now. He sounds so normal and reasonable that it makes my stomach turn, and I'm realizing how good he is at lying, how much practice he must have had fooling people into thinking he's just a concerned parent. The call ends and I move away from the vent, my heart pounding because I know that means no one's coming to check on the broken window or the alarm. Hours pass and my stomach starts cramping badly, the kind of cramps that come with my period, and I realize I can use this. I call through the door that I'm having female problems and really need the bathroom right now, making my voice sound desperate and embarrassed. Brandon unlocks the door a few minutes later and he looks annoyed, but he lets me out, following me down the hall to the bathroom. While I'm in there, I notice the rope he used earlier is sitting on the edge of the sink, probably left there when he washed his bleeding hand. I work my fingers along the fibers as quietly as I can, loosening and fraying some of the strands, so maybe it'll break easier if he tries to use it on me again. When I come out, Brandon is waiting in the hallway, and he walks me back to my room without saying anything, just locks the door behind me with that heavy click of the deadbolt. I sit on my bed and press my ear against the heating vent again, and this time I hear something different coming from his room down the hall. He's recording something on his phone, practicing different ways to explain my episodes to people who might ask questions. I hear him rehearse lines about my dad filling my head with lies, and me having a history of hurting myself, building this whole fake story about me being unstable and making things up. He records the same explanation 3 or 4 times, adjusting his tone each time until it sounds perfectly concerned and believable. Night falls, and the house gets darker and quieter, and I start paying attention to Brandon's footsteps in the hallway. He walks past my door every hour or so, like he's checking to make sure I'm still locked in and haven't found a way out. I listen to the pattern of creaking floorboards and time how long he spends in different parts of the house, turning my fear into information I can actually use. I map it all out in my head, memorizing which boards creak the loudest, and how long it takes him to walk from his room to mine. The next morning, when the sun starts coming up, I go to the window and test the screws again, confirming they're still drilled in tight and I can't open it. I start thinking through my options in my head, making actual plans instead of just panicking. Plan A is somehow signaling Miss Apple next time I see her, maybe flashing my palm message or getting her attention through a window. Plan B is finding a way to break through my bedroom door, or maybe punching a hole in the drywall, though I don't know if I'm strong enough for that. Neither plan is good, but doing nothing means staying locked in here for 3 whole days with Brandon, and I know I can't let that happen. I carefully tear a page from my old notebook and write, "Help, locked in, call police," in the biggest letters I can fit on the paper. I fold it up tight and go to the bathroom. Then I angle myself at the tiny window above the toilet and toss the note through the gap toward Miss Apple's yard. I watch it land in her bushes near her back door, and I don't know if she'll ever find it, but at least it's something. At least I tried. Brandon brings me breakfast later, and I act even more cooperative than before, asking quietly if I can have some ice for my swollen hand. He seems pleased that I'm being so compliant, and he brings me an ice pack wrapped in a plastic bag, setting it down on my dresser while he watches me. While he's standing there, I slip a second tiny note into the seam of the plastic bag, hoping somehow it might be found later if the bag gets thrown away or recycled. I wait until afternoon, and then I grab a towel from my closet and use it to partially block the heating vent, creating just enough smoke to trigger the detector for a second before I clear it away. The alarm starts beeping and Brandon comes running up the stairs, and I watch through the crack in my door as he checks the detector and resets it. Now I know his emergency response pattern and exactly how long it takes him to reach my room when something goes wrong. He sits down on the hallway floor right outside my door and pulls out his phone, and he starts showing me more fake text messages supposedly from Mom. The screen is angled so I can see them through the gap, and they say things about her being worried about my mental state and wanting to get me help. I notice the timestamps don't quite match up right, and there are typos that Mom would never make, like your instead of your and missing punctuation. I'm cataloging every single detail that proves he's making up evidence, storing it all in my memory so I can tell someone later if I ever get the chance. A few hours later, I hear the engine sound from his truck starting up in the driveway, and my heart jumps because maybe he's actually leaving. I rush to test the door handle, but it's still locked solid from the outside, and I press my ear against the wood trying to figure out what he's doing. The truck idles for a minute, then goes quiet again, and I move to the window to see what's happening. Brandon's back within 20 minutes, and I watch him pull into the driveway carrying bags from the hardware store. He opens the truck bed and starts unloading zip ties and duct tape, and my whole body goes cold because I know exactly what those supplies mean. He glances up at my window and I duck back fast, but I think he saw me watching. My hands won't stop shaking as I grab the pen I used earlier to write on my palm, and I pull up my sleeve. I start drawing a rough map on my forearm, marking where each injury is. The rope burns on my wrists, the cuts from the broken window, the bruises from being dragged across Miss Apple's lawn. I write tiny timestamps next to each mark using the clock on my broken Chromebook as reference. The rope burns happened at 8:47 p.m., the window cuts at 8:52 p.m., the bruises at 9:03 p.m. I'm turning my own body into evidence because it might be all I have if I ever get out of here. I pull my jeans down slightly and write more timestamps on my inner thigh where no one would see unless they were looking for evidence. Each mark gets a time and a brief note about what caused it. My skin burns from pressing the pen so hard, but I need this to be clear and readable. I hear footsteps coming up the stairs, and I quickly pull my sleeve back down and sit on my bed, trying to look calm. Miss Apple's voice carries from downstairs, and I freeze because she's here, and maybe she found one of my notes. I press my whole body against my bedroom door and strain to hear what she's saying. Brandon intercepts her at the front door, and his voice is smooth and friendly, like nothing's wrong. I angle myself at the gap near the banister, and for 1 second I manage to flash my palm with the words, "Help, locked," still visible in smudged pen. I hold it there as long as I dare, but Brandon's body blocks her view almost immediately, and I don't know if she saw it. Their voices fade as he walks her back toward her house, and I slump against the door feeling defeated. When he comes back upstairs, I hear his footsteps stop right outside my room. His voice comes through the door telling me I just earned myself a punishment for trying to signal the neighbor. I hear him walk to the bathroom, and then there's this metallic creaking sound followed by silence. He turned off the water to my bathroom, and I can hear the pipes go quiet. I rush to the bathroom sink and turn the handle, but nothing comes out. The toilet tank still has water, but that's it. I'm already thinking about the half-full water bottle on my nightstand and how to make it last as long as possible. My throat feels dry just thinking about it. That night, while Brandon's watching TV downstairs, I get down on the floor and look under my bed frame. There are wooden slats holding up the mattress, and I test one with my hands to see if it might break. I work as quietly as possible, applying pressure to the weakest-looking slat, and moving so slowly it takes 2 full hours to get it to snap without making noise. Every few minutes, I stop and listen to make sure Brandon's still downstairs. Finally, the wood cracks, and I catch both pieces before they can clatter. I hide the longer piece under my mattress near the headboard where Brandon wouldn't see it even if he searched the room. Now I have something that could work as a pry bar, and the small victory helps push back the panic that's been building in my chest. I test the weight of the wood in my hand, and it feels solid enough to use as a tool, or maybe even a weapon if I get desperate enough. I watch through the crack under my door as the hallway light creates shadows of Brandon's feet moving back and forth. He sits down on the couch, and I can see the shadow pattern of his legs stretched out. I time his breathing by the slight movement of his shadow, and after about 40 minutes, I recognize the deeper rhythm that means he's dozing off. It's 3 a.m. according to the clock on my dead Chromebook, and I'm wide awake cataloging his patterns like I'm studying a dangerous animal. I notice he shifts position every 12 to 15 minutes, even when he's sleeping. His phone alarm goes off at 3:30 a.m., and I hear him get up to check something, then go back to the couch. I'm gathering information about every habit and weakness because that's the only control I have right now. Using my makeshift pry bar, I start working on the interior door hinges as quietly as possible. The pins are old and slightly rusted, which actually helps because they're easier to loosen. I work millimeter by millimeter over the next hour, applying gentle pressure and stopping whenever I hear any sound from downstairs. I leave everything looking normal from the outside, but now I know I could potentially lift the whole door off its hinges if I get desperate enough. Having an escape route planned makes the walls feel less like a cage, even though I'm still trapped. Brandon's phone rings downstairs, and I hear Mom's voice on speaker. She's crying, and her words are all broken up with sobs. I press my ear against the heating vent to hear better, and catch her saying something about not being able to handle this. Brandon's voice is calm and understanding as he responds to her. Then I hear Mom say the words that make my stomach drop. She's crying and says she can't do this anymore, and asks him not to make her choose between the two of us. The words hit me like a physical blow because she already chose him when she packed every suitcase and left me here alone. I have to swallow down the grief and anger because I can't afford to fall apart right now. I need to stay focused on getting out of here alive. My eyes burn, but I force myself not to cry because crying won't help anything. I pull out a few strands of my hair one at a time, trying not to make it obvious. I slide them under the door gap as far as they'll go, then I blow gently and watch them move with the air current from the hallway. The hall lights are still on, and I can see the microscopic gap between the door and the floor. I'm gathering information about every possible weakness in this room, every tiny opening that might be useful later. The gap is maybe a 1/4 inch at most, but it's something. I test different spots along the door bottom and find the widest point is near the hinge side. Before sunrise, I hear Brandon's footsteps coming up the stairs and the sound of his power drill starting up. I peek through the crack in my door and see him installing something on the wall right above my door frame. When he finishes and steps back, I can see it's a security camera with a blinking red light pointed at my door. But I notice the red light isn't actually on. It's just a reflection from the hallway light hitting the plastic lens. There's no wire running from it to anywhere, and the mounting bracket looks cheap. He's trying to intimidate me with a fake camera, and the fact that I caught his trick gives me a tiny bit of confidence back. I know he's watching and planning, but I'm watching and planning too. The next morning, Brandon unlocks my door and stands there watching me with his arms crossed. He tells me I can use the bathroom for 5 minutes and points at his watch like I'm some kind of prisoner on a schedule. I shuffle past him and lock the bathroom door behind me, my hands still shaking from everything that happened yesterday. The glass shard is still tucked in my sock from last night, and I pull it out carefully while the water runs in the sink to cover any sounds I might make. I work the shard under the corner of the window screen where I noticed a screw yesterday, twisting and prying as quietly as possible. The metal is old and the screw threads are stripped in places, which actually helps because it turns easier than I expected. I keep glancing at the door, listening for Brandon's footsteps, and my heart pounds so hard I can feel it in my throat. After what feels like forever, the screw comes loose and drops into my palm. I close my fingers around it and feel the sharp threads dig into my skin. The screen is loose now on one corner, and when I test it gently, it moves about an inch away from the frame. If I can get the other screws out, I might be able to remove the whole screen and actually open this window, which is smaller than my bedroom window, but I think I could fit through if I had to. I palm the screw and tuck it into my sock with the glass shard, then flush the toilet and wash my hands like nothing happened. Brandon's knocking on the door telling me my time is up, and I take one last look at the loose screen corner before I open the door. He walks me back to my room and locks me in again without saying anything, and I hear his footsteps go downstairs. I sit on my bed and pull out the screw to look at it properly. It's small but solid, maybe half an inch long, and just holding it makes me feel like I have some kind of control. I'm building options piece by piece, little things he doesn't know about that might save me later. An hour passes and I hear Brandon's voice downstairs on his phone. I press my ear against the heating vent and his words drift up through the metal. He's talking to someone about a welfare check and he sounds annoyed, saying something about nosy neighbors who don't mind their own business. My chest gets tight because Miss Apple must have called someone after all. Maybe she did see something when I tried to signal her, or maybe she's just worried because she hasn't seen me around. Brandon's voice has this edge to it that wasn't there before, like he's actually nervous about something. He tells whoever's on the phone that everything's fine, and his stepdaughter is just grounded for lying to her father. The way he says it sounds so reasonable and normal that it makes me sick. I feel this weird mix of hope and fear because if someone's checking on me, that's good, but I also know how well Brandon can lie. He performed perfectly for Miss Apple yesterday, and he'll do the same thing for whoever shows up. I need to figure out how to make them see the truth, how to show them the lock on my door, or get them to hear me somehow. My mind races through possibilities, but none of them seem good enough. 2 hours later, I hear a car pull up outside, and through my window, I see a police cruiser park in front of our house. My whole body floods with this desperate energy, and I start banging on my floor with both fists as hard as I can. I'm screaming for help over and over, my voice getting raw and hoarse, and I know the police are right downstairs and they have to hear me. But then the TV downstairs suddenly blasts on so loud that the bass vibrates through the entire house. The sound is so overwhelming it drowns out everything else, and I keep screaming anyway, pounding on the floor until my hands hurt. I can hear muffled voices downstairs, men's voices that must be the officers, and Brandon's smooth responses that I can't make out over the TV noise. I press my ear to the floor trying to hear anything useful, but the TV is too loud. After maybe 10 minutes, the voices stop and I hear the front door close. I scramble to my window and watch the police cruiser pull away from the curb, and my legs just give out. I collapse against my door and slide down to sit on the floor. They were 10 feet away from me, maybe less, and they couldn't hear me screaming. Brandon's footsteps come up the stairs and stop outside my door. He doesn't say anything, but I can feel him standing there, and then he walks away. The TV volume goes back to normal and the house gets quiet again. Requested Reds is on Spotify now. Check out link in the description or comments. I force myself to stand up even though my whole body feels heavy and wrong. I need to do something, anything, because waiting for rescue clearly isn't working. I find a piece of paper in my desk drawer and a pen that's almost out of ink, and I start writing everything down in the smallest letters I can manage, so I can fit more words on the page. I write the brand name of the lock Brandon installed. It's called a Master Lock Barrel Bolt, and I describe exactly where it's mounted on the outside of my door frame. I write out the timeline starting from when Mom left, when Brandon locked me in, when I broke the window and he dragged me back. I describe the fake text messages he showed Miss Apple and how he rehearsed his stories on voice memos. My hand cramps up from writing so small, but I keep going, filling both sides of the paper with every detail I can remember. When I'm done, I fold it tight into a small square and wait for my next bathroom break. Brandon lets me out an hour later and I palm the note while I walk to the bathroom. I lock the door and climb onto the toilet to reach the small window above it. The window doesn't open, but there's a gap at the bottom where the seal is broken, maybe half an inch of space. I fold the note even smaller and push it through the gap, watching it flutter down toward Miss Apple's yard. It lands closer to her back door this time, right near her recycling bins, and I'm just praying she finds it, or at least one of these notes I've been leaving. Brandon bangs on the door and tells me to hurry up, and I flush and wash my hands with my heart racing. When I come out, Brandon grabs my arm and pulls me toward the bathroom instead of back to my room. He tells me I need to take a bath and wash off all the dried blood from my hands and arms. I don't want to, but I'm scared of what he'll do if I refuse. So I nod and he starts running the water. He stays in the bathroom the whole time, leaning against the counter and watching me, and I've never felt more trapped in my life. I keep my eyes down and try not to cry while I wash the blood off my hands. The cuts from the window are crusty, and some of them start bleeding again when the water hits them. While I'm washing, I very carefully pull out a few strands of my hair one at a time, trying not to make it obvious what I'm doing. I let them fall into the water, and then I lean down like I'm washing my legs, and I push the hairs under the baseboard where it meets the tile floor. There's a small gap there, and the hairs slide underneath and disappear. If someone ever investigates this house, they'll find my DNA in weird places that prove I was trying to leave evidence. The thought keeps me focused, even though I'm terrified sitting here with Brandon watching me. I'm not just surviving. I'm planning. I'm making sure there's proof of what he's doing, even if something happens to me. Brandon keeps shifting his weight, and I glance up and see him looking at his hand. The bite wound from yesterday is red and swollen, with yellow stuff oozing out around the teeth marks. He winces when he tries to flex his fingers and mutters something under his breath about it getting infected. He tells me to finish up and get dressed. Then he walks out, and I hear him on the phone in the hallway. He's talking to someone at a pharmacy, asking if they have antiseptic cream and proper bandages in stock. My heart starts beating faster because if he goes to the pharmacy, that means he'll leave the house. He comes back and tells me through the door that he's going out for 20 minutes and he's setting extra locks. He says he'll know if I try anything because he's got ways of checking, and his voice has this threatening edge that makes my stomach drop. I hear multiple locks clicking into place on my bedroom door, more than just the one deadbolt, and then his footsteps go downstairs. A minute later, his truck starts and I hear it pull out of the driveway. The second the truck sound fades, I jump into action. I pull the wooden bed slat out from under my mattress where I hit it and run to my door. The hinge pins are already loosened from my work last night, so I wedge the slat into the gap at the top of the door and start prying upward. The door is so much heavier than I expected, and my arms shake from the effort. I have to use my whole body weight, pushing up on the slat like a lever, and I feel the door shift slightly. Sweat drips down my face and my muscles burn, but I keep pushing. The top of the door lifts maybe an inch and I can see a gap opening up. I push harder and the gap gets wider, 2 inches now, and I think I can fit through if I can just get it a little higher. My hands slip on the slat and I almost lose my grip, but I adjust and push again. The door lifts 3 inches, 4 inches, and now there's enough space. I drop the slat and grab the top of the door frame, then I pull myself up and start squeezing through the gap. My shoulders barely fit and I scrape skin off on the rough wood, but I don't care. I wiggle and push and pull, and suddenly I'm through, falling onto the hallway floor on the other side. I leave skin and probably blood on the door frame, but I'm out, and that's all that matters right now. I crawl to the bathroom as fast as I can and push the dresser under the window. My hands are shaking so bad I can barely grip anything, but I climb onto the dresser and reach for the window latch. It's stuck from years of paint, but I dig my fingernails under it and pull. It won't move. I look around desperately and spot a wire hanger in the corner, and I grab it and bend it straight. I use the wire to scrape away the paint around the latch and try again. This time it moves a little, and I keep working it back and forth until it finally slides open. The window is tiny, maybe 18 inches square, and I don't know if I'll fit, but I have to try. I push the window open and look down at the roof overhang about 6 feet below. I grab the window frame and start pulling myself through. My hips get stuck and I have to twist sideways, scraping my ribs raw on the frame. The pain is sharp and bright, but adrenaline pushes me through it. I wiggle and push, and suddenly I'm sliding through, falling toward the roof. I hit the shingles hard and they're rough and hot from the sun. I slide down the slope trying to slow myself, but I'm moving too fast and then I'm falling again, dropping into the bushes below. Thorns cut my arms and legs and branches scratch my face, but I'm outside. I'm actually outside, and I force myself to stand up even though everything hurts. I run toward Miss Apple's house, staying low and moving as fast as I can. My side gate leads to her yard and I push through it, my breath coming in painful gasps. Then I see them and my heart just sinks. Both of my notes are sitting in Miss Apple's recycling bin, crumpled up with junk mail and old newspapers. She never saw them. She never even knew I was trying to reach her. I'm fighting back tears because all that effort, all that risk, and she just threw them away with the trash. Then I hear it. Brandon's truck turning onto our street. The engine sound is unmistakable, and I know I have maybe 60 seconds before he gets back to the house and realizes I'm gone. My whole body goes cold and I run to Miss Apple's back door. I bang on her door with the pattern I remember from when we used to play games when I was little. 3 fast knocks, 2 slow, 3 fast. It was our secret code, and I'm praying she remembers. The door opens and Miss Apple stands there looking confused, and I shove my forearm right in her face. The injury map I drew is still there, the timestamps and locations marked in pen on my skin. I'm gasping out words about Brandon locking me in and the exterior deadbolt. And please call 911 right now. My voice breaking and desperate. Miss Apple's expression shifts from confusion to horror as she reads the marks on my arm and sees the cuts and bruises covering my body. She pulls me inside and locks the door behind us. Miss Apple grabs her phone and dials 911, putting it on speaker while she guides me away from the front door. I'm trying to catch my breath and my whole body won't stop shaking. The dispatcher answers and Miss Apple explains there's an emergency, that her neighbor's stepdaughter just escaped from being locked in her room and is injured. Through the front window, I see Brandon's truck coming around the corner really slow, and he stops in the middle of the street when he sees my bedroom window is empty. Miss Apple notices me staring and quickly pulls the curtain closed. Then she locks her front door and slides the chain across. We move toward her back room and I collapse into a chair because my legs finally give out. The dispatcher is asking questions, and Miss Apple hands me the phone and I force myself to speak, even though my teeth are chattering so hard I can barely form words. I tell the dispatcher my stepdad locked me in my room with an outside lock and was going to hurt me, that I had to break a window to escape. The dispatcher says officers are on their way and to stay on the line, and just hearing that help is actually coming makes something break loose inside me. I'm shaking so bad the phone almost falls out of my hand, but Miss Apple steadies it and stays right next to me. She brings me a blanket and wraps it around my shoulders, and for the first time in hours, someone is treating me like I'm telling the truth instead of making things up. The dispatcher keeps asking me questions about my injuries and whether I'm in immediate danger, and I describe the cuts on my hands and the rope burns on my wrists. Miss Apple looks at my wrists and her face goes pale when she sees the marks. There's a knock on the front door and Brandon's voice comes through, all concerned and friendly sounding. He calls out that his stepdaughter is confused and really needs her medication, that she's been having episodes and he's worried about her safety. Miss Apple looks at me and I shake my head as hard as I can, mouthing the word no over and over. She walks to the front door but doesn't open it, and she tells him through the wood that the police are already on their way and he should wait at his own house. Brandon's voice changes just a little, gets this edge to it, and he says he needs to get some paperwork to show the officers about my medical history. Miss Apple doesn't answer, and after a minute I hear his footsteps going back down her porch steps. The dispatcher tells us to stay inside with the doors locked until officers arrive, and Miss Apple double-checks all her locks while I sit there wrapped in the blanket. My hands won't stop shaking, and I keep looking at the front window expecting to see Brandon's face pressed against the glass. Miss Apple sits down next to me and asks if I want some water, and I nod because my throat is so dry I can barely swallow. She brings me a glass and I drink it too fast, water spilling down my chin because I can't hold the cup steady. 2 police cars pull up outside and I see the officers getting out, and Miss Apple opens the door before they even knock. They come inside and one of them starts talking into his radio, while the other one kneels down in front of me. I force myself to speak clearly even though I'm crying now, and I hold out my wrist to show the rope marks. I tell them about the exterior lock on my bedroom door, and how Brandon installed it while I was inside. How he said we had 3 days and he was going to teach me a lesson. The officer writes everything down in his notebook and asks me specific questions about what time things happened and exactly where the lock is located. I describe how Brandon showed Miss Apple fake text messages from my mom and rehearsed his story about me having episodes, and I can see both officers taking me seriously as they write. The second officer asks if I have any other injuries, and I show them my hands with the cuts from the broken window, my scraped ribs, my broken fingernails. They take photos with their phones and document everything, and one of them calls for an ambulance. But I say I don't need one right now. I just need them to see the lock on my door. Miss Apple confirms that Brandon tried to take me back to the house earlier, and that she saw my injuries when I showed up at her door. A detective arrives about 10 minutes later and introduces himself as Logan Ware. He says he was the one who took the welfare check call earlier today, and now he's following up because the situation has changed. He asks me to walk him through the whole timeline starting from when my mom left, and I tell him everything in order. I describe the exterior deadbolt Brandon installed, the screws in my window frame, how he cut the power when I tried to message my friend. Detective Ware writes down every detail and asks really specific questions about the lock mechanism and whether I know what brand it is. His questions are detailed and professional, and he doesn't act like I'm being dramatic or making things up, and that makes me trust him enough to tell him about the other evidence. I explain about the message I scratched under my dresser with the date and time, about the hair I hid under the bathroom baseboard, about the injury map I drew on my arm with timestamps. He leans forward and looks at my forearm where I wrote the locations and times of each injury, and he photographs it with his phone. He tells me this kind of documentation is really helpful for building a case, and I feel like all my careful planning is finally paying off. The officers ask if I can show them the lock at my house, and Detective Ware says he'll come with us to document everything. Miss Apple offers to come too, and I'm grateful because I don't want to go back there alone even with police. We walk next door, and Brandon's truck is gone from the driveway, and I feel this weird mix of relief and fear about where he went. The officers go in first and check to make sure the house is empty, then they call us inside. I lead them upstairs to my bedroom and point at the heavy-duty deadbolt installed on the outside of my door. One officer photographs it from multiple angles while the other one examines how it's mounted to the door frame. Detective Ware asks me questions about when Brandon installed it and whether I heard him drilling, and I describe hearing the power drill and how long it took. They document the loosened hinge pins where I tried to escape, the broken window with glass still on the floor, the message I scratched under my dresser. An officer carefully moves the dresser and photographs the scratched words with the date and timestamp, and seeing them treat my room like an actual crime scene makes everything feel more real. They bag the exterior lock as evidence after photographing it in place, and Detective Ware makes notes about the window screws and the alarm system. I tell them I need to go to the emergency room to get my injuries officially documented, and Detective Ware agrees right away. He says he'll arrange transport, and that having medical records will be important for the case. Miss Apple squeezes my hand before I leave and apologizes for not seeing my notes earlier, for not realizing something was wrong. I tell her it's okay because she believed me when it really counted, when I showed up at her door covered in blood and scratches. She starts crying and says she should have paid more attention, should have noticed the signs. One of the officers drives me to the hospital while Detective Ware stays at the house to finish documenting evidence. At the ER, they take me back pretty quickly once I explain why I'm there. The nurse is gentle and matter-of-fact as she photographs every single injury. She documents the rope burns on both wrists, the cuts on my palms from the broken window, the scraped skin on my ribs from squeezing through the small opening, my broken fingernails from clawing at the window frame. She asks me to describe exactly how each injury happened, and I walk through the whole timeline again while she takes notes. She measures the rope marks and notes their depth and pattern, photographs the bruises forming on my ankles where Brandon grabbed me. The whole process takes over an hour because she's so thorough, and I'm glad because I want everything documented. She cleans and bandages the worst cuts and gives me something for the pain. Then she says someone from Victim Services is coming to talk to me. A woman named Opal Sellers comes into my room and introduces herself as a victim advocate. She sits down and explains what happens next in a calm, clear way. She talks about the police investigation and how long it usually takes, about CPS getting involved to make sure I'm safe, about safety planning and protective orders. She explains that there might be criminal charges against Brandon depending on what the investigation finds, and that I have rights throughout this whole process. She mentions temporary placement options since I can't go home right now, and discusses what a protective order means and how it works. I'm trying to absorb all this information while I'm exhausted and everything hurts, and Opal seems to understand because she writes down the main points for me to read later. She gives me her card and says I can call her anytime with questions, and she'll help me navigate all the systems and paperwork. She talks about my rights during interviews and court proceedings if it comes to that, and about counseling services that are available. Having someone explain everything in plain language helps me feel slightly less lost. Detective Ware comes back to do a more thorough interview, and I tell him absolutely everything. I describe the exact brand of the lock because I saw the package in the trash, explain how Brandon called to cancel the alarm service appointment, tell him about the voice memos I heard Brandon recording where he practiced different stories. I mention the fake text messages he showed Miss Apple and how the timestamps didn't match up right. Detective Ware writes it all down in his notebook and types notes into his phone, and he tells me that specific details like lock brands and phone records really help build a strong case. I explain about the injury map I drew on my body with timestamps, about throwing notes out the bathroom window trying to reach Miss Apple. He asks if I remember approximately what time each major event happened, and I do my best to give him accurate times. He seems impressed that I documented so much and tells me that kind of evidence makes a huge difference in these situations. I feel like everything I did to leave a trail and gather proof is finally being taken seriously, instead of dismissed. I pull out my phone and try calling Mom, but it goes straight to voicemail. I take a breath and leave a message in the calmest voice I can manage, asking her to please call me back and saying that I've contacted CPS myself. I don't accuse her of anything or let my voice break. I just state the facts about what happened and that I need her to call. When I hang up, Opal nods and says that was exactly the right approach, that staying calm and factual is better than getting emotional or accusatory. She says Mom is more likely to engage if I don't put her on the defensive right away, even though I have every right to be angry. Detective Ware adds that my mom will need to be interviewed as part of the investigation, and that how I communicate with her now could affect how cooperative she is later. I save the voicemail I left in 3 different places, including the cloud, because I want a record of exactly what I said and when I said it. They place me in a temporary hotel room through a victim services program, while CPS gets involved. The room has 2 beds and a mini fridge and curtains that don't quite close all the way. Opal drops off a bag with basic supplies like toothpaste and clean clothes, and tells me to call her if I need anything at all. That night, my phone rings 3 times from a blocked number. Each time I stare at the screen and my thumb hovers over the answer button, but I don't press it. Opal told me not to answer any calls I don't recognize, so I let them all go to voicemail. Brandon doesn't leave messages. Just having that boundary, that choice to not answer, feels like a tiny bit of control I didn't have before. I save screenshots of the blocked calls with timestamps in case they matter later. The next morning, a CPS caseworker named Phyllis Chambers calls at 8:30. Her voice is flat and businesslike as she asks about my living situation and family history. She wants to know where I've been staying, who I've been living with, if there's other family who could take me. I answer each question as clearly as I can, even though my throat feels tight. She's professional, but not warm. Not mean either. Just doing her job. She schedules an in-person meeting for the next day at 2 p.m. She explains this is standard procedure for cases involving parental neglect. The word neglect hits different from abuse or danger. It feels like she's saying Mom failed to protect me, which is true, but hearing it stated so plainly makes my chest hurt. An hour later, Detective Ware calls with an update. Brandon provided police with text message screenshots supposedly from me admitting I made everything up. My stomach drops when he tells me this. Detective Ware asks if I'll consent to having my phone examined by their tech team to verify metadata and message authenticity. I agree immediately because I know those texts are fake. I never sent anything like that. He says they'll need my phone for a few days and asks if I have another way to stay in contact. I tell him I can use the hotel phone and give him that number. He says this is good, that I'm doing the right thing by cooperating fully. Opal comes by the hotel room that afternoon with her laptop and a legal pad. She helps me write a clear, dated affidavit describing everything that happened. I start from the beginning, from Mom leaving with all the suitcases, and work through every detail I can remember. I include the evidence I hid, the message I scratched under my dresser, the hair I tucked under the bathroom baseboard, the injury timestamps I drew on my body. Opal types while I talk and asks questions to help me be more specific about times and locations. She says physical evidence is crucial in these cases. The fact that I thought to document things in real time makes my account more credible. She prints out the affidavit and I read it 3 times before signing it. Seeing everything written out in plain language makes it feel more real and also more manageable, like I'm building a case piece by piece instead of just surviving chaos. 2 days later, CPS does a home visit with police escort. I have to go back inside that house. My chest gets tight with panic the second we pull up to the driveway. Phyllis and 2 officers walk me to the front door. The key is under the mat where it always is. Inside, everything looks normal, like nothing bad ever happened here. The living room couch where Brandon tied me up. The stairs where he caught my ankle. My bedroom door with the exterior lock still installed. Phyllis photographs the lock mechanism from multiple angles. We go to my room and I show them where I scratched the message under my dresser. One officer moves the furniture while another takes pictures of the words I carved into the wood. They photograph the loosened door hinge pins that show my escape attempt. In the bathroom, I point to the baseboard where I hid the hair. An officer uses tweezers to recover it and seals it in an evidence bag. They document everything methodically, and I stand there watching them turn my survival tactics into official evidence. Being back in this house makes my skin crawl, but seeing them take it seriously helps. Mom finally calls me back that evening. Her voice is defensive and shaky. She keeps saying Brandon told her I was having episodes like after Dad went to prison. She says he showed her messages where I threatened to hurt myself. She says she thought giving me space would help me calm down. I don't argue or plead. I just calmly tell her CPS wants to meet with both of us present and ask if she'll agree to that. There's a long silence on the other end. I can hear her breathing. Finally, she says yes in this small voice. I tell her Phyllis will call her with the details, and then I hang up before she can say anything else that might make me cry. Detective Ware calls again the next day with another update. His preliminary review shows the timestamps on Brandon's supposed texts from me don't match my phone's carrier records. The messages were created on a computer and sent to his phone to manufacture evidence. He walks me through how they can tell, something about metadata and IP addresses. Hearing this confirmation that Brandon fabricated everything makes me feel vindicated and sick at the same time. Vindicated because it proves I was telling the truth. Sick because it shows how calculated he was, how much planning went into framing me. Phyllis from CPS calls to go over the safety plan she's putting in place. No contact with Brandon under any circumstances. Only supervised contact with Mom until the investigation is complete. She explains this isn't punishment but protection. While part of me is relieved, another part grieves that my own mother needs supervision to be safe around me. Phyllis talks about the difference between keeping me safe and punishing my mom. She says these boundaries exist to make sure everyone follows the rules while they figure out what happens next. I ask what happens if Mom breaks the no contact rule with Brandon. Phyllis says there are consequences, but she doesn't specify what they are. The supervised meeting with Mom happens 2 days later in a CPS office with Phyllis present. Mom sits across from me at a conference table. Her eyes are red and puffy. I state facts in plain language without crying or yelling. I describe what Brandon did. The lock on my door, the rope, the 3-day plan. I describe what Mom knew before she left. The screws in my window frame, Brandon's smirk when she said she was leaving. I watch her face cycle through denial and defensiveness and finally something that might be shame. She keeps shaking her head like she's trying to reject what I'm saying. Phyllis takes notes and doesn't interrupt. When I finish, Mom just sits there staring at the table. Phyllis slides a document across to Mom. It's an interim agreement saying she won't let Brandon contact me and she'll participate in family counseling. Mom reads it slowly. Her hand shakes as she picks up the pen. She signs it, but she won't admit she knew Brandon was dangerous. She won't say she should have protected me. It's not the apology or accountability I wanted, but Phyllis says it's a start. After Mom leaves, Phyllis tells me that progress in these systems is measured in small, frustrating steps. She says I should feel proud that I got this far. I nod, but I don't feel proud. I just feel tired and empty, like I used up everything I had just to get Mom to sign a piece of paper that says she'll do the bare minimum to keep me safe. Detective Ware calls 2 days later with news about the warrant. A judge signed off on searching Brandon's phone and computer because the fake text messages show he planned everything ahead of time. He walks me through what they're looking for. Things like when the messages were created and what programs he used to make them. The tech team needs a few weeks to pull everything from the devices and build a timeline. He tells me legal cases move slow and I need to be patient, but hearing that they're actually building a case makes me feel less helpless. I'm stuck in this weird waiting period where I know bad things happened, but nothing's resolved yet, and I have to figure out how to live normally while everything's still up in the air. Opal calls the next morning to tell me she found a trauma counselor who works with teenagers in abuse situations. The counselor has an opening next week, and Opal already sent over my case information, so I won't have to explain everything from scratch. Part of me dreads going through it all again with another new person. Another part of me is so tired of carrying this weight alone that I just want someone professional to help me sort through it. Opal says the counselor won't push me to process emotions I'm not ready for. She'll just help me build coping skills and safety plans. That sounds more manageable than sitting around talking about my feelings for an hour. 3 days later, the police need me to come back to the house one more time. Detective Ware meets me outside with 2 other officers and we go in through the front door. My stomach twists being back inside, but I focus on the task. We go upstairs to my old room and I show them exactly where I scratched the message under my dresser. They move the furniture carefully and photograph the carving from multiple angles before using some kind of tool to preserve it. Detective Ware compares the dates I carved into the wood with the dates on my ER paperwork and my first police report. Everything matches perfectly. He says this kind of proof that I was documenting things while they were happening is really powerful evidence because it shows I wasn't making things up later. Seeing them treat my desperate scratches like important evidence makes me feel validated in a way I didn't expect. A week goes by before Phyllis calls with an update about Mom. CPS and mom's lawyer put pressure on her to hand over her actual phone so the carrier can pull complete message records. Phyllis explains this is a big deal because it means mom is starting to accept that Brandon faked evidence, even if she won't say out loud that she put me in danger. I don't feel relieved exactly, more like I'm watching someone slowly wake up from denial. It's progress, but it's not the same as mom actually admitting she knew Brandon was dangerous and left me with him anyway. Phyllis reminds me that people move through acceptance at their own pace, and I shouldn't expect too much too fast. 3 weeks after I escaped, Detective Ware calls with the news I've been waiting for. They have enough evidence to charge Brandon with unlawful restraint and tampering with evidence. The DA is reviewing everything to decide about prosecution. He warns me that legal processes take months and nothing's guaranteed, but this is real movement forward. He says I should feel good about how carefully I documented everything, because that's what made building this case possible. Hearing that my desperate evidence gathering actually mattered makes me want to cry with relief. The court grants a temporary protective order that requires Brandon to stay at least 500 feet away from me at all times. CPS decides the hotel placement isn't stable enough long-term, so they move me to a foster family with experience handling trauma cases. The foster mom's name is Larissa Turner, and she meets me at the CPS office before the placement. She's probably in her 40s with gray hair and this calm way of talking that doesn't feel fake. She tells me her house rules are simple and she won't push me to share anything I'm not ready to talk about. Her house is small but clean, and she shows me to a bedroom that's just mine. Having my own space with a door that locks from the inside makes me feel safer than I have in weeks. My first counseling session happens 4 days after I move in with Larissa. The counselor's office is in a medical building, and the waiting room has magazines and a fish tank. When she calls me back, I have to walk through everything again, describing what Brandon did and how I got out. My voice shakes, and I have to stop a few times, but I get through it. She doesn't try to find silver linings or tell me everything happens for a reason, which I appreciate because I'm sick of people acting like trauma teaches you lessons. Instead, we set small goals like getting on a regular sleep schedule and updating my safety plan with current phone numbers. Focusing on practical steps feels better than trying to process big emotions I'm not ready to touch yet. Miss Apple visits me at Larissa's house the following week. Larissa lets her in and gives us privacy in the living room. Miss Apple sits down and apologizes again for not finding my notes sooner and for believing Brandon's lies that first night. Then she tells me something that makes my chest tight. She agreed to be a witness about the moment I tried to signal her through the banister. She says she did see the message written on my palm, but Brandon moved so fast to block her view that she thought she imagined it. Knowing she actually saw it validates that I did everything possible to get help. She squeezes my hand and says she'll never forgive herself for not acting sooner, but she's going to make sure everyone knows the truth now. After she leaves, I sit on Larissa's couch feeling this mix of gratitude and grief. That night, I open my phone and record a voice memo with today's date. I list everything that's happened so far, what's supposed to happen next with the DA and CPS, and who to call if Brandon tries to contact me or shows up anywhere. I include Detective Ware's direct number, Phyllis's office line, Opal's cell, and the protective order details. I save the memo in 3 different places, including the cloud backup. Having this factual record on my phone makes me feel prepared instead of just scared. It's like I'm building my own safety net, one piece of documented information at a time. If something happens, I won't have to remember everything in a panic, I'll just have to play the recording. That's all I've got. If you're still watching, I'm impressed and mildly concerned. But hey, you might as well subscribe at this point. It can't get much worse, right?